Ambassador Trell stood frozen before the Galactic Council, his pale blue skin fading to an ashen gray as he struggled to process what he had just witnessed. The holographic display at the center of the Grand Chamber slowly rotated, showing a planet with swirling white clouds against vibrant blue oceans and rich, varied landmasses. Earth, the newly discovered homeworld of the species calling themselves humans. This classification must be an error, Trell finally managed, his voice barely carrying across the hushed chamber. No sentient species has ever evolved on anything above a Class 9 death world. High Counselor Mex, the ancient reptilian chairman of the Classification Committee, flicked her scaled tail in agitation. There is no error, Ambassador. We have run the assessment protocols 17 times. The gravity, atmospheric composition, temperature ranges, geological instability, indigenous predators, microscopic pathogens, and radiation levels all confirm it. Earth is a Class 13 death world, murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives of the Galactic Alliance's 500-member species. In the 12,000 years of recorded galactic history, no civilization had ever emerged from a world rated above Class 8. Such environments were simply too hostile to allow the development of intelligence before extinction occurred. But they're so fragile-looking, said Representative Dorn from the methane-breathing Orlani. Their bodies have no natural armor, minimal redundant systems, and extremely limited regenerative capabilities. That is precisely what makes this situation so alarming, replied Science Director Vin, bringing up new data on the holographic display. These humans have not survived through physical adaptation, but through behavioral adaptation. They have overcome their world not by evolving with it, but by forcing it to change to suit them. The display showed humans in various environments, sweltering deserts, frozen tundras, dense jungles, and raging seas, thriving where logic dictated they should perish. This is unprecedented, Trell said. My government will be concerned. Governments should be concerned, Counselor Mex stated flatly. Our preliminary cultural analyses suggest these humans view their struggle against their environment as normal. They consider death and pain to be expected parts of existence. Their entertainment often glorifies violence that would traumatize most of our species. The chamber fell silent as footage played of human sporting events, with participants deliberately colliding with one another, falling from heights, and enduring physical punishment that made several representatives turn away in disgust. And these are their recreational activities? Someone asked incredulously. Correct, said Vin. Furthermore, their medical technology is primarily focused on repair rather than prevention. They routinely perform invasive procedures on themselves, cutting into their own bodies to remove or replace damaged components. They deliberately expose themselves to weakened pathogens to build immunity. They have even mastered the art of ingesting substances that are mildly toxic to experience altered mental states. Captain Jack Reed, the first human representative invited to observe Galactic Council proceedings, shifted uncomfortably in his seat at the back of the chamber. He had been warned that Earth's classification might raise concerns, but nothing had prepared him for the looks of horror now directed his way. With all due respect, Jack said, rising to his feet, we're just people trying to make our way in the universe like everyone else. The silence that greeted his words was deafening. Just people, Mex repeated slowly, mandibles clicking. Captain Reed, your species has survived conditions that would exterminate most of ours within days. Your people consider it normal to persist, through injuries that would send our civilizations into collective trauma. The average human child endures more pain and danger before maturity than most of our species experience in a lifetime. Jack shrugged, a gesture that several delegates mimicked with fascination. We adapt. It's what we do. And that, the Galactic Council realized with growing unease, was exactly what made humans so terrifying. 3 standard cycles after Earth's classification, the galactic research vessel Seeker of Knowledge maintained a respectful orbit around the blue-green death world. On board, lead xenobiologist Prell stared at the live feed from the human settlement below, unable to tear his eyes away from the horrifying spectacle. They're allowing their young to fall repeatedly onto the hard surface, he noted with clinical detachment that barely masked his distress. The observation team watched as human children climbed metal structures, swung from bars, and tumbled onto the ground, only to get up laughing. "It's called a playground," explained Dr. Tom Wilson, the human liaison assigned to the research team. "Kids need to test their limits, build strength, learn balance. It's how we develop." Prell's epidermis rippled with discomfort. On his homeworld, offspring were kept in cushioned environments until their exoskeletons fully hardened. The concept of deliberately exposing young to potential injury was beyond comprehension. "And this is permitted by your authorities?" asked Assistant Researcher Lynn, her tentacles curling in distress. Tom chuckled. "Encouraged, actually. Overprotection leads to weakness." The alien researchers exchanged troubled glances. Their mission to understand how humans had not only survived, but thrived on their Class 13 world was proving more disturbing than anticipated. "We would like to observe your military training facilities next," Prell said, consulting his schedule. "Our preliminary reports indicate that your warriors voluntarily undergo extreme physiological stress as preparation." "That's right," Tom confirmed. "Basic training pushes recruits to their limits. Sleep deprivation, physical exhaustion, psychological pressure. It weeds out the weak and forges the strong." "Weeds out the weak," repeated Lynn softly. In galactic standard, the phrase translated with disturbing implications of deliberate culling. The concept violated dozens of interspecies ethical codes. Later that day, the research team observed from a safe distance as human soldiers crawled through mud beneath electrified wires, climbed towering walls, and engaged in ritualized combat. "Training. Remarkable pain tolerance," Prell noted, recording data as a female soldier continued her exercises despite a bleeding wound on her arm. "It's just a scrape," Tom said dismissively. "Not even worth a medic's time." The team's medical officer, Dr. Zeal, nearly fainted at this statement. On her world, any breach of the protective outer membrane required immediate quarantine and treatment. That evening, as the alien researchers compiled their findings, an emergency alert sounded throughout the vessel. The humans had invited them to something called a barbecue. "They're burning organic material and animal flesh in the open air," reported Security Officer Vax with alarm. "And they appear to be consuming it." "Is it some form of ritual sacrifice?" asked Lynn nervously. Tom laughed when they cautiously arrived at the event. "It's just dinner and socializing. Here, try a burger. We made some with plant protein for our non-carnivorous guests." The researchers watched in fascinated horror as humans gathered around the fire. Actual, uncontained flame, talking and laughing as if standing near something that could consume their bodies in minutes was perfectly normal. "Your species evolved alongside fire," Prell observed, keeping a safe distance. "Yet it remains one of your planet's greatest killers." "That's true of most things on Earth," replied Captain Maya Jones, the military base commander, as she flipped meat on the grill with casual expertise. "Water, heights, weather, other animals, microscopic organisms, all can kill us. So we learn to master them instead of fear them." As the evening progressed, the researchers observed another shocking human ritual: the voluntary consumption of ethanol, a substance that temporarily impaired cognitive function. "You deliberately poison yourselves for enjoyment?" Dr. Zeal asked, incredulously. "We call it taking the edge off," Maya explained with a wink. "Sometimes forgetting about dangers for a while is the only way to stay sane when you live on a world that's constantly trying to kill you." The researchers' report that night contained a new and troubling observation. Humans didn't merely survive their death world, they embraced it. The Galactic Council's emergency session stretched into its fourth day as representatives debated the implications of the human delegation's request. Captain Jack Reed and his team sat quietly at their designated table, seemingly unconcerned by the heated arguments swirling around them. "It is absolute madness," thundered Representative Quill of the Phosphori Confederation. "They are requesting permission to establish embassies on 17 member worlds, including 3 with environmental conditions that their own scientists admit would be fatal to unprotected humans." "With all respect," Jack interjected calmly, "we've developed containment suits and environmental adaptation technology that will allow our diplomats to function in those environments. You propose to send your people to worlds where the very air would dissolve their lung tissue?" asked Counselor Mex, unable to keep the horror from her voice. "The suits are quite reliable," Jack replied with a shrug. "And all diplomats understand the risks." This casual dismissal of potentially lethal hazards sent another wave of murmurs through the chamber. The human capacity for accepting danger continued to disturb the council. High Minister Trell, now elevated to the council's inner circle due to his expertise on the human situation, activated his platform's communication system. "The real issue is not whether humans can survive on our worlds," he said gravely. "It's whether our civilizations can survive exposure to humans. Their cultural influence could be destabilizing." The humans exchanged glances, and Dr. Ellie Reeves, Earth's chief xenoanthropologist, stepped forward. Unlike many council members who communicated through translation devices, she had mastered several alien languages and addressed the assembly in flawless high galactic. "We understand your concerns," she said. "Our history is marked by struggle, against our environment, against disease, against each other. But that struggle has forged resilience and innovation that we believe can benefit the Galactic Alliance." She gestured to the holographic display, which showed images of human medical facilities. "Our approach to medicine focuses on rapid adaptation and creative problem-solving. While your civilizations have eliminated many diseases through controlled evolution and environmental engineering, we've developed techniques to heal injuries and illnesses that your species have never needed to confront." The display shifted to show human emergency responders rushing into a burning building. "We embrace risk when necessary to help others. Our psychological makeup allows us to function under conditions that would traumatize most Alliance species." "That is precisely what concerns us," said Representative Dorn. "Your people routinely endanger themselves. You practice extreme sports. You explore dangerous environments without adequate safeguards. Your entertainment glorifies risk-taking behavior. If such attitudes were to spread among our more impressionable populations—" "We're not here to change your cultures," Jack insisted. "We're offering partnership. There are environments in this galaxy that even your most advanced drones cannot effectively explore, but humans can." Science Director Vin reluctantly activated her speaking light. "The humans have a point. Their physiological adaptations to stress and danger could make them ideal for certain high-risk scientific missions. Early reports indicate they recover from gravitational transitions at 4 times the rate of our hardiest exploration teams." "And what happens," asked Trell, "when these humans encounter hostile species or situations?" "Their history suggests they respond to threats with overwhelming force." The chamber grew quiet as footage played of historical human conflicts. Wars fought with increasingly devastating weapons, battles that would have triggered immediate psychological collapse in most Alliance species. Dr. Reeves watched the reactions of horror with understanding. "We've learned from our past," she said softly. "Our capacity for violence is matched by our capacity for compassion. We've developed complex ethical systems precisely because we understand our own potential for destruction." As the debate continued, the matriarch of the Zilani, one of the oldest species in the Alliance, activated her rarely used speaking priority. "I have listened to these discussions with growing concern," she said, her ancient voice carrying surprising strength. "Not for what these humans might do to us, but for what we might become without them. For 10,000 years our Alliance has grown comfortable. We have engineered away danger, eliminated risk, and in doing so, perhaps limited our potential. These Class 13 Deathworlders remind us of what we once were and what we might need to be again." Her words hung in the air as the Council contemplated the unsettling possibility that the humans' greatest contribution to galactic civilization might be reintroducing the concept of necessary risk. Commander Alex Foster stepped onto the bridge of the Earth vessel, intrepid as klaxons blared. Red emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across the faces of his crew as they worked with practiced efficiency despite the crisis. "Status report," he demanded, strapping himself into the command chair just as the ship shuddered violently. "The Rigelian transport is caught in the solar flare," reported Lieutenant Kate Ryan, her fingers dancing across the navigation console. "Their shields are failing. Radiation levels inside their habitat ring are already at lethal levels for their species. How long until the next flare?" 17 minutes, sir. After that, the radiation will make rescue impossible even for us." Alex nodded grimly. The Rigelians, methane breathers with crystalline exoskeletons, were among the most environmentally fragile species in the Alliance. Their ship had been caught in an unexpected stellar event while conducting astronomical research. Now they faced certain death unless the human rescue vessel could reach them in time. "Move us into position," Alex ordered. "Prepare for evacuation protocols." From the science station, Dr. Raj Patel looked up with concern. "Commander, if we position ourselves between the Rigelian vessel and the star, our own shields will absorb the brunt of the radiation, but they'll only hold for approximately 12 minutes. "That should be enough time," Alex replied calmly. The Galactic Alliance observers present on the bridge exchanged alarmed glances. Observer Lin, now serving as official liaison between the Alliance and Earth's space service, stepped forward. "Commander Foster, you cannot seriously intend to risk your vessel and crew for a rescue that falls outside standard safety parameters," she protested. "Alliance protocols clearly state—" "We're not operating under Alliance protocols," Alex cut her off. "This is a human vessel, and we don't leave people to die when we can save them." As the Intrepid maneuvered into position, radiation alarms began to sound. The ship's advanced shields, a hybrid of human ingenuity and galactic technology, glowed visibly as they absorbed the deadly stellar emissions. "Docking tube extended," reported Security Chief Marcus Jones. "Boarding team ready." Alex activated the ship-wide communication system. "All personnel, prepare for radiation exposure beyond recommended limits. Medical bay, stand by for potential casualties. This is not a drill." Observer Lin's translucent skin pulsed with anxiety as she watched the human crew check their radiation badges, small devices that changed color as they absorbed dangerous levels of radiation, with casual glances before continuing their work. "Each minute in this position is equivalent to 5 years of acceptable radiation exposure under Alliance safety standards," she noted with horror. "We've taken anti-radiation meds," Kate explained matter-of-factly. "And our cells have better repair mechanisms than most species. We'll be fine." The rescue operation proceeded with remarkable efficiency. As the boarding team helped disoriented Rigelians into the Intrepid's specially prepared quarantine bay, the ship's shields began to deteriorate under the stellar assault. "Shield integrity at 38%, reported the engineering officer. "We have approximately 4 minutes before catastrophic failure." "That's cutting it close," Alex muttered. "Boarding team, status?" "Last group coming through now, sir," came the response through the comm system. "Some injuries among the Rigelians, but all accounted for." When the final evacuees were aboard and the docking tube retracted, Alex ordered immediate withdrawal. The Intrepid pulled away just as another massive solar flare erupted, catching the edge of the vessel and sending power fluctuations cascading through its systems. In the aftermath, as the medical team treated radiation exposure among the crew, Observer Lin conducted her formal assessment. She found Commander Foster in the medical bay, receiving treatment for second-degree radiation burns on his left arm. "You knowingly placed your vessel in danger," she stated, her translator struggling to convey her mix of horror and reluctant admiration. "You personally absorbed radiation that will increase your cancer risk by 23%. Alex winced as the medic applied regenerative gel to his arm. "The Rigelians are alive. That's what matters. This incident will be reported to the Galactic Council," Lin continued. "It demonstrates exactly why human unpredictability concerns many member species." "Feel free to include that we'd do it again," Alex replied with a tired smile. "And that next time, we'll have better shields based on what we learned today." That, Lin realized as she completed her report, was precisely what made humans so valuable and so terrifying. Where others saw unacceptable risk, humans saw opportunities to improve. The assembly hall of the Galactic Science Academy fell silent as Dr. Ellie Reeves finished her presentation. The data hovering in the holographic display showed results that defied conventional scientific understanding, and the assembled researchers, representing over 300 species, struggled to process the implications. "You deliberately infected yourselves with the pathogen?" asked Chief Medical Director Brill, his eye stalks quivering with disbelief. "Controlled exposure," Ellie corrected. 27 human volunteers received carefully measured doses of the Andromeda bacteriophage after preliminary lab studies suggested our immune systems might respond differently than Alliance species. The Andromeda bacteriophage had devastated 3 colony worlds in the past decade, killing millions of settlers and defying all attempts at treatment. The microorganism attacked neural tissue with devastating efficiency and no species had demonstrated natural resistance until humans arrived. This approach violates every ethical protocol in xenobiological research, protested senior researcher Grell, his feathers bristling with agitation. Deliberately exposing sentience to known lethal agents is standard procedure in human medical research when other options have been exhausted, Ellie interrupted. The volunteers were fully informed of the risks, and we had promising preliminary results from in vitro studies. The display shifted to show detailed scans of human neural tissue before and after exposure to the pathogen. Unlike the neural degeneration seen in other species, the human samples showed the bacteriophage being surrounded and neutralized by specialized white blood cells. Something in our evolutionary history exposed us to similar pathogens, explained Dr. James Morgan, the lead immunologist on the project. His left arm rested in a support sling, the result of his own participation in the study. Our immune systems recognize the threat and respond accordingly. And now you propose to synthesize this immune response and adapt it for non-human physiology? Asked Director Brill. We already have, James replied, nodding to Ellie, who updated the display, to show treatment results from preliminary trials on affected populations. The data showed a 78% recovery rate among previously terminal patients. The assembly erupted in a chaos of reactions, excitement, disbelief, ethical objections, and stunned silence depending on the species and their cultural views on medical experimentation. Admiral Lee, the human representative to the Academy's oversight board, stepped forward. We understand this approach challenges Alliance medical ethics. Humans have debated similar issues throughout our history, but facing extinction-level threats sometimes requires calculated risks. You risked 27 lives, exclaimed researcher Grell. To save millions, Admiral Lee replied calmly. And every volunteer knew exactly what they were doing. Later, as the formal session concluded and researchers broke into smaller discussion groups, Ellie found herself approached by Trill, now serving as the diplomatic science liaison between Earth and the Alliance. Your methods disturb many of my colleagues, he said without preamble. But I cannot argue with the results. The treatment derived from your research has already saved my niece on Proxima Colony. Ellie nodded, accepting his gratitude with a small smile. Human medical history is full of researchers who experimented on themselves. It's something of a tradition. A tradition born of necessity, I imagine, Trill observed. When one evolves on a world teeming with pathogens, perhaps such directness becomes inevitable. They walked together through the Academy gardens, specially designed to accommodate the environmental needs of dozens of different species. Ellie noticed Trill's discomfort as they passed through a section modeled after Earth's rainforests, the humidity and oxygen levels higher than his species preferred. What troubles the Council most, Trill said, pausing beside a small pool filled with luminescent algae, is not your medical breakthroughs, but what they represent. Humans view their bodies as expendable in ways that horrify most sentient species. Not expendable, Ellie corrected, but resilient. We've survived countless plagues, adapted to every environment on our world, and developed medicine through a process of trial and error that sometimes had terrible costs. And this has shaped your psychology as well, Trill noted. Your species embraces risk in ways that seem irrational to the rest of the Alliance. Is it irrational to accept small risks to prevent greater harm? Trill's skin rippled in the equivalent of a thoughtful frown. Perhaps not. But it makes many wonder what other human traits might reshape galactic civilization, for better or worse. As they continued their walk, they passed a group of human children, offspring of Academy researchers, playing an improvised game that involved climbing and jumping between decorative stone formations. Several alien observers watched with fascination and horror as the children risked falls that could result in serious injury, all while laughing. They're perfectly safe, Ellie assured Trill, noting his distress. Children need to test their physical limits to develop properly. By risking bodily harm? He asked incredulously. By learning what they're capable of, she corrected. That's the paradox of humanity that the Alliance still struggles to understand. Our greatest strength isn't that we can survive a Class 13 death world. It's that we've learned to thrive there. As if to emphasize her point, one child slipped and fell, scraping her knee. Instead of collapsing in trauma, The girl simply examined the injury, wiped away the blood, and rejoined the game with renewed determination. Trill watched in silence, finally understanding what truly made humans dangerous. Not their tolerance for risk, but their ability to transform adversity into advantage. General Parker stood at the viewport of the Alliance battlecruiser Unyielding Justice, watching as the swarm of hive ships approached the Arcturus colony. Behind him, the ship's command center hummed with nervous activity, as the primarily Valoran crew prepared for what might be their first, and last, direct combat engagement in over 3 centuries. The evacuation is only 67% complete, reported Fleet Commander Drell, his scaled crest flattened against his skull in distress. We cannot hold the defensive line long enough to save everyone. The Hive, a collective consciousness controlling insectoid drones, had emerged from uncharted space 6 months earlier, consuming every world in its path. Conventional Alliance defensive strategies had proven ineffective against an enemy that viewed its individual units as utterly disposable and attacked with overwhelming numbers. "We'll hold them," General Parker replied with a confidence that startled the alien commander. "The human fleet will arrive in 20 minutes. We just need to keep the Hive occupied until then." "With respect, General, even your human vessels cannot withstand these numbers," Drell said grimly. "The mathematical models are unequivocal. We face 94% probability of total defeat." Parker turned from the viewport, his weathered face set in determined lines. "Math doesn't account for everything, Commander. When the first wave of human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, the Alliance observers were confused by their approach. Rather than forming a defensive perimeter around the vulnerable colony, the Earth vessels accelerated directly toward the center of the Hive swarm. "What are they doing?" gasped Junior Officer Prill, now serving his first combat rotation. "That's suicide!" On the command channel, Admiral Blake's voice was calm as she issued orders to the human fleet. "All vessels deploy Trojan protocols. Targeting solutions confirmed. Prepare for synchronized detonation on my mark." The human ships plunged into the heart of the enemy formation. For a brief moment, the Hive vessels seemed to hesitate, their collective consciousness possibly confused by this irrational tactic. "Mark," said Admiral Blake. What happened next stunned the Alliance observers. Instead of conventional weapons fire, each human vessel erupted in a precisely calculated explosion that propelled specialized delivery vehicles deep into the densest concentrations of Hive ships. Within seconds, these smaller craft detonated, releasing clouds of engineered microorganisms. "Biological weapons?" Commander Drell asked in horror. "No," General Parker corrected. "Something far more elegant. Those are modified extremophile bacteria from Earth's deep-sea hydrothermal vents. They consume the specific organic compounds used in hive ship construction." On the tactical display, the effect became immediately apparent. Hive vessels began to break apart as their organic hulls literally dissolved. The collective consciousness, faced with unprecedented physical degradation of its units, pulled back in disarray. "The human captains, they sacrificed themselves?" asked Officer Prill, staring at the debris field where Earth vessels had been moments before. "No sacrifices today," Parker replied with a tight smile, pointing to the tactical display where escape pods from the human ships were being recovered by fast-moving Alliance vessels. Standard emergency evacuation. Every ship carried minimal crew for this operation. In the aftermath, as Alliance forces secured the system and completed the colony evacuation, Commander Drell sought out General Parker in the battlecruiser's observation lounge. "The Alliance Defense Council will have questions about today's tactics," Drell said without preamble. "Using ships as delivery vehicles for biological agents violates 17 different combat protocols." "Those protocols were written for conventional warfare," Parker replied, sipping from a cup of steaming coffee. "The Hive doesn't play by those rules, so neither can we. You willingly destroyed billions of credits worth of military hardware. Hardware can be replaced. Lives can't." Parker set down his cup and faced the alien commander directly. "That's something humans learned the hard way on our death world. Sometimes survival requires sacrificing resources rather than people." "This approach to warfare is unsettling," Drell admitted. "For thousands of years, the Alliance has relied on deterrence rather than direct engagement. Our military doctrine emphasizes minimal risk and acceptable losses." Which works fine, until you meet an enemy that doesn't calculate risk the same way you do, Parker pointed out. The Hive throws endless drones at its targets because it values quantity over individual units. We countered with a strategy that exploited that weakness. Drell's crest slowly rose as understanding dawned. You use their numbers against them. The more concentrated their swarm, the more effective your weapon. Exactly. On Earth, we've always had to adapt to predators, diseases, and disasters that don't negotiate or follow rules. Sometimes the only way to survive is to change the game entirely. As reports came in from across the sector of Hive forces in full retreat, Drell realized that the Alliance had gained more than just a tactical victory. They had gained a new perspective on conflict, one shaped by humanity's evolution on a world where adaptation wasn't just advantageous, but necessary for survival. The Defense Council may not approve of your methods, Drell said finally, but they cannot argue with the results. The colony is saved with minimal loss of life. Parker nodded, turning back to the viewport where Alliance and human ships now worked together to clear debris and secure the system. That's all that matters in the end. Not following protocols, not preserving hardware, not even maintaining tactical doctrine, just saving lives. In that moment, Drell understood the paradox at the heart of humanity's approach to conflict. Their willingness to embrace destruction was ultimately in service of preservation. The Grand Hall of Harmonious Unity, traditionally used only for the most momentous occasions in galactic history, buzzed with anticipation as representatives from every Alliance world gathered for the historic ceremony. At the center of the vast chamber stood the 7 pillars of civilization, ancient symbols of the founding principles upon which the Galactic Alliance had been built millennia ago. Today, an 8th pillar would be added, and the galaxy would never be the same. High Counselor Mex, now in her final term after a distinguished career, approached the ceremonial platform with careful dignity. Beside her walked President Maria Rodriguez, Earth's first elected representative to the Galactic High Council. The contrast between them was striking, the ancient reptilian counselor moving with deliberate caution, while the human diplomat strode forward with confident steps. 5 years ago, Mex began, her voice carrying through the hall's perfect acoustics. When Earth was classified as a Class 13 death world, many believed humans would be quarantined rather than welcomed into our community. The fear was understandable. No sentient species had ever evolved under such hostile conditions and emerged capable of peaceful integration with galactic society. Murmurs rippled through the gathered delegates as memories of those tense early days resurfaced. Today, Mex continued, we recognize how profoundly wrong those fears were, and how much our civilization has gained through humanity's unique perspective. The vast holographic displays around the hall activated, showing scenes from the past, 5 years, human medical teams treating victims of the Proxima Plague, Earth's environmental engineers restoring ecosystems damaged by industrial accidents, human negotiators brokering peace between the Zentari factions after centuries of conflict, and most recently, the decisive victory against the Hive threat that had nearly overwhelmed Alliance defenses. Humans have reminded us of something many of our worlds had forgotten, Mex said solemnly. That adversity breeds not just resilience, but innovation. That comfort can lead to stagnation. That risk, properly embraced, can lead to growth. President Rodriguez stepped forward, placing her hand on the new pillar, a striking column of blue-veined marble quarried from Earth's Himalayan mountains. We came to the stars carrying the legacy of our homeworld, she said. A world that challenged us at every step of our evolution. A world that taught us that survival alone is not enough. That we must strive to thrive, to improve, to adapt. The pillar began to glow softly as ancient ceremonial technology recognized the genetic signature of Earth's representative. The 8th pillar that we dedicate today symbolizes the principle of adaptive resilience, Rodriguez continued. The capacity to face challenges not with fear but with determination. To see obstacles as opportunities. To embrace necessary change, while preserving core values. As she spoke, the other 7 pillars, representing peace, knowledge, harmony, diversity, justice, compassion, and foresight, began to glow in resonance with the newest addition. Ambassador Jack Reed, now gray-haired but still standing proud, watched from the diplomatic section with Drell beside him. Their initial antagonism had evolved into one of the most productive working relationships in the Alliance. "Did you ever imagine this day, when you first classified our world?" Jack asked quietly. Trell's skin rippled with what Jack had learned to recognize as wry amusement. "Never. I was convinced your species would either withdraw from galactic society or attempt to conquer it. Instead, we found a middle path. As humans always seem to do," Trell acknowledged. "Your adaptability extends beyond the physical into the cultural and philosophical. It is most impressive." Around them, representatives from worlds that had initially feared human unpredictability now spoke enthusiastically of joint projects, cultural exchanges, and integrated defense initiatives. The classification that had once seemed a barrier to acceptance had become a mark of distinction. As the ceremony concluded, President Rodriguez joined the gathered dignitaries. She had just become the first human to serve on the Council of Elders, the Alliance's highest governing body, a position traditionally reserved for species with at least 1,000 years of membership. "An extraordinary honor," Trell remarked. "And an extraordinary responsibility," Rodriguez replied. "But humans are accustomed to carrying heavy burdens." Later, as celebrations continued throughout the Alliance capital, a young alien child approached Jack with innocent curiosity. The child belonged to a species known for their cautious nature and environmental sensitivity. "Is it true that human children play with fire?" the youngster asked, multifaceted eyes wide with wonder. Jack smiled. "Sometimes. We also climb mountains, dive into oceans, and dream of exploring the farthest reaches of space. Aren't you afraid?" "Often," Jack admitted. "But we've learned that fear is just information, not a command. Sometimes the things most worth doing are the things that frighten us most." The child considered this with solemn attention. "My parents say humans have changed the Alliance forever. All species contribute something unique to galactic civilization," Jack replied diplomatically. "But you taught everyone how to be brave," the child insisted with the simple clarity of youth. As Jack watched the next generation of Alliance citizens mingling, human children playing alongside alien youngsters, sharing stories and dreams without the burden of ancient prejudices, he realized the child was right. Earth's greatest contribution wasn't technology or military strategy or even medical breakthroughs. It was perspective. In the space of a few short years, humanity had transformed from an alarming anomaly to an essential catalyst for change. The Class 13 Death World designation that had once inspired fear now commanded respect throughout the galaxy. Not because humans had conquered death, but because they had learned to live meaningfully, despite its constant presence. And that, perhaps, was the most human achievement of all.